100 days, 100 nights to know a man's heart. 100 days, 100 nights to know a man's heart. And a little more before he knows his own. You know a man can play the part of a saint just so long. For a day comes when his true self unfolds. Yes, it does. He may be mellow, he may be kind, treat you good all the time. But there's something just beyond what he's told. Hey, 100 days, 100 nights to know a man's heart. 100 days, 100 nights to know a man's heart. And a little more before he knows his home.
Yeah, so you guys make sure you hold the mic. Yeah, totally. I was like, they need water. How are you?
Good, good.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks for coming out.
Oh, yeah.
I really
didn't think you were going to have that many people.
I know, it's crazy. I think people are. I'm actually pleasantly surprised.
I'm too.
I had a dream that 10 people showed up and it was another
Yeah, my
disaster.
wife and daughter came with me and they said,
Oh, did they? Are they
yeah,
here?
they're going to be there in parking.
Oh, good.
And I said, they said, how many people? I said, it could be 10 and it could be 50. I don't know.
Well,
At 9:15, this room was empty.
You guys were starting to worry.
That was a little creepy. Like,
But see, we
where is
had
everybody?
like 90 people registered through Ty's website alone, plus then all the Techweek badge holders. So I was like,
Is today the first big day? Yesterday was a big day.
yesterday was a pretty big day. Monday will be another big day. That's the thing. They actually have good people on every day. So I think you'll see. And it's only 1,500 badges yesterday. So.
Wow. 1,500? It was kind of funny because I was when I was standing in line for the badge, it's like a lot of people came up and like, do you know what your session is? I'm like, it's like that's kind of scary. It's like people have been reading up on the bios and everything.
They check you out. Yeah,
They're
totally.
like, hey, do you know where you sit? I'm like,
Yeah.
What's the order again?
Okay, so, what do you mean?
No, just for us.
Oh, okay. Do you want us to talk? Or just tell me if you have something to add, and we can split it up. Do you want to start with the welcome? I'll do the Sean write up, or do you want me? I'll pass it on. You can say
Oh, as far as you're gonna thank everyone for attending.
and then I was going to thank you for the idea. Talk about our conversation, and then do you want me to bring you in here so you can say why you feel so passionate about this?
I feel like it's kind of knows.
Okay. Intro to
Sean.
Yeah.
Do you just want me to do the intro to Sean, or are you gonna?
No, I was going to do that. I was
Okay.
just going to read it.
Alright.
Sure.
Yeah, I can probably just introduce you actually, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, if you're just gonna read all this stuff,
Yeah.
I'm not in there.
And then let's do that. And then just say both roles.
So break actress is what? Director of Time West and director of. Okay.
Okay. You want to go?
I guess we're ready. Mike.
Should I stand down here? Or
Mike on?
that?
What was that?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can start.
Oh, geez, never started off before.
What? I know.
Is it on? Oh, it's on.
All right.
Hey everyone, we're gonna get started soon here. So if we could, I guess everyone could find their seats, and we'll get started. My name is Seth Kravitz. I am the co-founder of Technori and co-founder of a startup competition going on right now called Spark Chicago. And basically, I'm a bootstrapper, just like these men up here and Sean over here. And basically wanted to put together a panel talking about bootstrapping and just something that's a passion of mine. So got together with Maria Catras, who's behind me. She is the director of Built in Chicago and the director of Tide Midwest. And she's going to do all the intros, and I just want to say thanks for coming, and I hope you have a great time.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out on a Saturday morning at 9:30. Seth and I feel really passionate about this panel. We had a panel on venture-backed entrepreneurs, and Seth came up to me and said, we never talk about all these awesome bootstrapped entrepreneurs in Chicago, and we thought, done, we'll do a panel. And so thank you to the 4 panelists and to Sean, our moderator, for agreeing to participate. I think they all have incredible stories where collectively they are now over $300 million in revenue, and I think we could all learn a ton from them. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Sean, and he will get up here to introduce the panelists. Sean is the founder and president of Centro Media here in Chicago. It is a digital media firm focused on software to improve relationships and efficiencies between buyers and sellers in the advertising industry. He's pretty much a case study in the making, as I like to say it. With 2010 revenues northward of $100 million, an employee hiring currently averaging 11 people a month, it is clear his formula is working. A few accolades for Centro recently have been they were ranked #1 in Crain's Chicago Best Places to Work. They've been a couple times on the Inc. 500 Fastest Growing Companies, and they are on the Crain's list of Chicago's largest privately held companies. So if you could please join me in welcoming Sean Rigsecker.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming. I got to tell you, I've been on a lot of panels over the last few years in my life, and this is by far, to me, the most exciting one that we get into. You know, and when we talk about entrepreneurship and building companies, the conversation always turns right away to, you know, angel this, angel that, VC this, VC that, and we talk about in Chicago, and we got to make sure we've got the funding activity going on. It's amazing to me how often we don't talk about, you know, the folks or the people who put their nose down, you know, put it to the grind, you know, don't go that route, and actually build incredibly large, successful, and great companies, and you know, and have the stories to talk about it. So today we're going to get to discuss it on some level. I actually hope that we celebrate it. You know, it's really my own quick story is we actually closed our Series A round in December 17th, 8 years into our business. Actually, yeah, a little over 8 years into it. It was our Series A, 22.5 million. We went out to get the capital, and everyone was laughing, going, "I've never heard of anyone asking for 22.5 million for a Series A," at that point. And it was funny to me, and there's reasons why we did it, but it's all of a sudden the light was shown upon Centro, and all of a sudden people cared, and all of a sudden people wanted to write about us and talk about us, and I'm sitting there going, that money just sits in a bank account. We did this all on our own. Who cares? Why aren't we celebrating, you know, the folks that just have, you know, a lot of gumption just to try to do it on their own? So today we're going to get into it. I haven't heard all the panelists' stories yet, so I'm really excited to talk about it. The only thing that I asked them today was to be very open. You know, I asked them to talk about the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly of what it takes to actually bootstrap versus going another route. So as Maria mentioned, collectively our companies represent over $300 million in revenue. We employ close up, I think, to 800 people in the city of Chicago. And so today we're going to talk about the stories. I'll do a real quick introduction because I really want to get to the meat of the subject. But I'll start all the way on my left. So Brandon Cruz is the co-founder, president, and CTO of Norvax. He started it in 2001. Norvax is a customer acquisition enrollment for health insurance industry. There's over 200,000 customers who choose their health insurance plans via gohealthinsurance.com, which is their site. Norvax has been twice on the Inc. 500 list, and Brandon's also been an E&Y finalist. So then we'll actually move to his right, and we have Andrew Seja. Andrew is the founder and CEO of K-Cura. He started it in 2002. They are a cloud-based managed services provider. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. You started in 2001. You guys are out of order versus my notes, just for the record. Yeah, can we all move, Ed? I'm kidding. So Andrew, they are the developers of e-discovery software called Relativity. Relativity is a web-based platform servicing the analysis, review, and production stages of the EDRM, which is Electronic Discovery Reference Method. What that means, by the way, I actually listened to some of the videos on his site as he was talking about their new release, and it sounded, I couldn't understand a word they were saying, so I had to go and look it up myself. So here's what it means in simplistic terms. They do discovery in civil litigation, digital forensics analysis of electronic documents to recover evidence. So things such as email, instant messaging, accounting database. So they have the ability to just churn through multitudes of data and pages. So that's Andrew. To his right, we actually have Ed Scanlon in second order on my sheet with Total Attorneys, founder and CEO. They are a cloud-based managed services provider via software. They really help small and solo law firm management. They handle things like practice management, client management. They have a virtual receptionist. They do the marketing and payment processing for a lot of small legal firms. Today they service over 1,000 law firms. He's been inducted into the Chicagoland Entrepreneurship Hall of Fame, E&Y finalist, Inc. 500 twice, and the Crane's fastest growing companies twice. And then finally to his right, we have Arvind Singh. He's the co-founder, president, and CEO of Utopia, Inc. He founded it in 2003, although it's not his first bootstrapped company. He's a serial bootstrapped entrepreneur. Prior to Utopia, he founded ValueCom in 1996. It was acquired by Rediff in 2001. Utopia today is a global services and strategy consulting firm focused exclusively on enterprise data lifestyle management, heavy data type of firm. He also is on the board of directors of the Lake Forest Graduate School of Management, as well as sits on many advisory boards of companies. So with that, welcome, guys. Thank you for coming. And so let's kick it off with the first question, and I'll kick it over to Brandon. So let's just quickly start about the day you started, okay, the beginning of this. Where did the spark of your idea come from? You know, and when you started the company, you know, how sure did you feel that you were going to be successful, or vice versa? How scared were you that you might not be successful, and what was the risk involved there for you?
So when we started our company, we didn't really have a real solid idea. My partner and I just knew that we wanted to do something on our own. The reason that I started the company was so that I would have the freedom to do the things I want to with my life and be able to hopefully make the money to be able to afford it. So we started off, and we knew we were going to be successful up front. We wrote our business plan after we started the company, and we just kind of went from there, and one thing led to another, and I guess being flexible let us stumble on the business that we have today, which has turned out really well. So
That's great. Ed, let's go to you.
Started the company as a general web development firm. So my background was in building websites, and I knew I didn't really like working for other people. So decided I'd build them for myself and go out and sell them. So the idea was very broadly focused on developing web apps. If someone had a broken computer, I'd find someone to go fix it for $150 an hour. The expense base I had at the time, I was 25, was really low, so I was pretty sure I was going to be successful because it didn't really cost me more than $1,000 a month to operate my life. So I figured I could cut my expenses down to nothing, and if I couldn't sell $1,000 a month, I probably shouldn't be doing anything. So,
Andrew?
Also a very similar story, computer programmer by trade, decided I was going to start a software consulting firm. This was in 2001. How the business exists today, we just did a project for a law firm to build this web-based document review platform, signed the deal where we kept the intellectual property to it, and then noticed over time that we actually had something on our hands there. Like one of your questions were like, did you know you can do it? I think these guys I actually know pretty well, and you just have to have a certain level of like confidence, and also like almost like no one can like slow you down. Right, it's almost to the point where you're like naive to the world, where like you're just gonna do it and it doesn't matter. And I think you need to have a little bit of that.
That's great.
I think that's the most important thing with a bootstrap company. You have to just know you're gonna do it, no matter what it takes. You just get there. You'll figure it out. Like you said, if you can't sell $1,000, then you shouldn't be doing anything. Well, you'll sell $1,000 when you have no other choice. So I think that's the big difference between the bootstrap companies that end up being successful and don't. You just have to do it. You have no choice.
Well, we're going to talk about kind of some of the worst case scenarios you all faced as you got there. But Arvind, let's just talk about how you started this.
Sure. I wish I could tell you that I woke up one day and I had a business plan, but I definitely didn't. So I had exited this telecom business that we had just sold off in 2001. I exited in 2002. I thought it was just time for me. Everybody said this is time for you to catch up on life and take a sabbatical and go hang out by the beach. So I was kind of doing a around the world trip, and I stopped in India for a few days, and I kept running into everybody who said, so what are you doing about this whole BPO thing, this whole outsourcing thing? And I said, nothing, because I used to have a telecom company, and I was sick and tired of running a call center. So, because back in the day, it was all about call centers. And I guess about 6 different people asked me the same question. I started to say, there's got to be something going on here that I'm not paying attention to. So we started to, I asked actually one of my other co-founders who had actually been telling me about what's going on in outsourcing. And I said, listen, okay, I know I've not paid attention to what you've been saying, so show me something. I'm in India. I've got 24 hours to go. So he set me up for a visit to one of the call centers. It was an outsourcing facility for Amex. Long story short, that's not the business we got into, but I kind of stumbled on the idea that there's something big happening with this whole global outsourcing thing. So we started a company with 2 other co-founders, my previous partner from the telecom business. We had no idea what we were going to do. We just said, this is huge, this is ground zero telecom. We were the 101st player in the business, but there's something new, and we just knew we were going to be successful. We had no business plan at the day.
Doesn't sound like there's a lot of forethought going in any of our companies, to be totally frank. So let's talk about those first few years when you get off the ground. If you're willing to share, make this maybe a quick response. But you know, real quick for me, right? I was making pretty decent money. I mean, I was getting a paycheck. I was doing really well. And you know, when I quit to start the company, I was like, you know what? I've got enough cash that can get me through 90 days. That's exactly what I had. And I'm like, and I got to start selling to get there. So I made, you know, probably half the amount of money that I made, maybe even less than that. Probably was less than that for the first couple of years. How do you pay yourself as a bootstrapped entrepreneur?
We did everything with credit cards. Back then, it was really easy to get a high limit credit card, and my partner and I both got, you know, a $60,000 limit, and we maxed them both out. And we were fortunate enough to have some friends that, you know, would help us out, you know, with dinners or, you know, things like that. And credit cards were the name of the game for us, and we just made enough to pay our rent because we had to pay that by check, and that was it.
Do you know how much money you made, like what you were paying yourself at the time? Or was it even a...
We didn't pay ourselves. The first few years, we were just anything we would make, you know, we would take what we had to spend. So we'd go to Costco and get, you know, I remember these giant bags of like frozen chicken, frozen fish, stuff like that. And we would, we'd eat that stuff, you know, over and over, you know, probably for the first 3 years. It was tough going in the beginning.
I think you're going to find a lot of similarities from these stories. I mean, that's exactly the same thing. I used to keep a spreadsheet that there was no difference between the company's cash flow and my own personal well-being. It pretty much was tied 1-to-1. So I would have one column of the spreadsheet that was all my expenses, whether it be you know, my cable bill, my car insurance, the contractors I owed money to, like. My whole life was just one side of expenses, whether they business or personal. How much I wanted to spend on the bars that month, that was actually like a column in there. Like, this month I might be able to afford $300 on bars. This is going to be a great month. And then the other side would be the revenue coming in, and I'd try to tie the dates when I'd be able to go and like send out an invoice and go collect it. And the Costco chicken bags was definitely also a part of it.
Yeah, one thing that helped us, our friends really believed in us, and they would always help us out if we'd go out to the bars or anything. They'd pay for us and say, you know, one day you guys are going to be successful, and, you know, we know it'll come back to us. So we've been spending the last few years paying everybody back.
Well, actually,
you're caught up.
or if I may, or, you know, taking him out on the boat that you were on yesterday with this nice tan, by the way, that he's got sitting here. So, you know, it's good to be your friend at this point. Go ahead.
Yeah, for me, it was, my salary was set to pegged at $30,000 a year. If we got a big project, maybe I indulged a little bit, but started the business when I was 24, and I really didn't start taking a reasonable salary until I was 29. And it was tough.
Interesting.
I think we went about it a little differently. We didn't track our expenses as well, but I guess we had the foresight to say we should put in about $20,000 each in the company. So the 3 founders put in $60,000. The other 2 continued to work till the till we have an idea in 90 days. So they came on board, one came on 90 days, another came in 120 days. It was hard for them to give up their jobs. So I'd had an exit, so I had a little bit more runway to sort of think about things. But it's funny when we talk about with our accountants or anybody who's looking at our company today and they say, what's your capital in the company? And they say $60,000, that's it. And so it's kind of interesting. We got things started with 60K.
And you know, it's interesting, and so my own personal piece of this, ran out of cash, obviously. At one point I was about $40,000 in debt through credit cards and unsecured personal loans through household finance, with all over at 28% interest at the time. And I can remember driving to Minneapolis and Detroit because I couldn't afford to fly to Dallas to meet some of my clients. And you know, you'd leave at midnight, you'd drive all night long, you'd have your meetings from 7 in the morning until 5 o'clock, and then you'd drive back because you couldn't afford the hotel. And something like that, and sleeping in the car on the highway back because you know you're tired, but sometimes you're just so jazzed to make it. So it's crazy, some of the things. So question for you guys with respect to the decision, okay? Did you all or anyone think at this point in your life to go, maybe I'm going to go raise capital? Does that enter your mind? In other words, or did you go, I'm going to be a bootstrapper? Or was it more just you fell into it? I mean, just talk about the idea of taking money, not taking money, when that thought started entering your heads. Andrew?
Well, at one point when we decided we were going to really focus the business on relativity, I did put a plan together. I did some projections. I did try to raise some type of money, but frankly, I was just not smart enough or not sophisticated enough to actually pull it off. But I did try.
Yeah.
We started, you know, in about 2001, and it wasn't even an option for us. We didn't have enough of a business plan or track record or history or anything to raise money. So it never even crossed our minds. We thought about it, and you know, like hearing in school that companies would raise money, and to me back then, raising money was like the success point. You know, if you raise money, you're rich all of a sudden. I was too naive to realize that would all go into the business and you'd spend it all. Yeah, it wasn't an option for us. That's why we never did it.
I think for us, we felt like we had $60,000 of runway, so we could afford to maybe, you know, think through things for a few weeks. But one thing we did is we got down to selling right away. We didn't wait to, you know, go find an office, spend money on this, that, and the other. We just got down to selling right away, and we used a lot of our frequent flyer miles to buy tickets to wherever we went. So we really had a very, very low expense rate. It was not, we weren't a burn rate company at all.
Yeah, we did not think about it. I did not think about it at all when I started. I'd worked in doing web development for some places that had actually raised money. I don't know if you guys remember the sauce.com or some of these other .coms in Chicago. And I'd be 21 selling, you know, email marketing solutions into these really rich companies, I thought, that had great kitchens and beautiful spaces. And I'm like, man, I just don't get it when they explain their business model to me. They must be so smart. So when I started, I was really brass tacks. You know, the way you get money is you go out and you sell stuff, and then you find people to do it for cheaper than you sold it for, and just kind of built from there. And we went, you know, pretty quick from, you know, 100,000 in revenue to, you know, 300 to 6 to 2 million to 6 million. By the time we started tracking it, like, you know, 20, we thought about it. We talked with some folks and got some term sheets, but just kind of stayed organic. And then in December of this year, raised $15 million, or last year, I should say. And that was the first time we'd done it, and we'd been profitable every year. And we did it more out of you know, wanting to grow quicker and got it on our terms. We didn't actually run a process. They came to us, which is unconventional, I guess. Maybe we should have run a process. But yeah, that was sort of our trajectory.
So one thing I've heard now, I think 3 times mentioned, and I have friends who want to start businesses. You know, you're always getting the question, hey, I want to start a company, I've got an idea and all that. You know, and the one thing I look at them, I go, then you got to know how to sell. How important is it as the founder, as a bootstrapper, to, whether you're good at it or bad at it, to figure it out?
It's the single most important thing. I would argue that if you can't sell and you are founding a company, you should probably think about doing something else. Whether you're selling your employees in the future, you're selling customers, you have to be able to sell your idea. And I think that's probably one of the key principles of leadership and founding a company.
Yeah, for us it was always sell first and then figure it out later. So if we had a product that we had envisioned in our heads, we would sell it, somebody would buy it, then we'd go build it as fast as we possibly can. And as you mature a little bit, I think you need to change that around. We still sometimes do that, and it that can lead to complications as the business gets a little more mature. But when you're small and you don't have any revenue, you have to sell first and figure everything out after.
Yeah, I'd also like to add that not only do you got to learn how to sell your product, but you also have to sell yourself and your business. As a bootstrap business, a lot of concerns that your customers might have is like, hey, I'm going to buy your product, but how do I know that you're going to be around 2, 3, 4 years from now? And people really have to believe in you personally, and that's a very important part of the process.
I was going to say, the selling starts at multiple levels. I think most of us probably went through this. The first thing we put together was the bios for the management team. And I remember that, that was our selling point of difference. And then we put together an advisory board, and we used to try to get the who's who on our advisory board. But I think very quickly we realized that all this is great, but until you start going out and selling to real customers, you're talking to yourself. Because we call it the differences between selling to what we call nodes, which is really friendly people, friends and family who would give you the time of the day and listen to you and say, it's a great idea, great category, great space, go for it. But quickly we realized that they are just nodes to customers. They're not the customer. And if you spend a lot of time, many people can spend months just talking to friends that encourage you, but they're not the customers. So I think it was very important for us to realize. The second point I was going to make is that the selling level changes, as someone else said earlier. I think, Brandon, when you were talking about that, you start by selling the management team, the advisory board, and then you start selling services. And today my job is to really sell the vision to the employees, to the various investors, stakeholders, not investors, stakeholders, to partners, to customers. So it's really about selling all the way through. It never stops.
If one of you guys who would raise their hand and go, I'm not a natural sales guy, like that doesn't come easy for me. Just talk maybe for a couple minutes about what did you do to go, I got to get over this fear and I got to go pick up the phone and do something like that. Andy,
yeah, I'll talk about it. So, I was a computer geek, very good computer programmer, kind of a social fun guy, but didn't really have the fundamental skills to sell at the time. And I think for me, it was you just had to continue to do it. I would continue to practice it. I would go and give demos of the software, and eventually over time, I'd get better. I'll tell a story where one of my customers set up like this West Coast roadshow for me to demo Relativity to 20 different law firms. Started in San Diego, worked up to LA, ended in San Francisco, and it was brutal. I'd get laughed out. My program would crash, and people would start laughing. I would have to humiliate myself over and over again. And I remember sitting in the Starbucks in this huge office tower. I was going to go to one of my last appointments, and almost in tears, saying I can't go and do this again. And but I went and I got it. And now they're a customer. So there's just something about that. You just got to keep on working at it.
I guess I was going to say the one thing I tell anyone who's thinking about starting a business is try and not be confessional. There's too many people even in our company today that'll go to a customer and say, they'll just start saying things that are just that are not sales. So try and not be an anti-salesperson. If there's something, because it's just, they go in and they start just saying, I'll give you a funny story. There's two funny stories real quick. The first one is that we had a very large break with a customer here in Chicago, and all throughout I was operating from my home office. And the funny story is, obviously the corporate headquarters were my home address and then Suite 101. So helpful tip number one, in case you're starting a company, call it Suite 101 so they think you're in an office building. So this customer suddenly says, we do a proof of concept. It's a huge deal. They're about to give us about $50,000, $60,000 a month. It's a $500,000 a year customer. And so suddenly they say, the work you did was awesome. We want to go see your facilities. And I go, well, this is interesting. Sure. And I said, well, but our facilities, we got it done out of our Center of Excellence out of Bangalore. And they say, oh, yeah, we'd like to go visit it. I figured I got, a few weeks before they get their visas and they get their airline tickets. And I said, sure, we'll arrange something. And they go, can we do it next week? We have people in India that represent us. And so that was an oh shit moment for me. And I got to tell you, we literally, obviously I danced on my toes and I got them to give me about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, because I said so-and-so is not going to be in town and so-and-so is not available. But thinking about it on your feet and not being confessional, and can you believe it, we pulled it off with a nice little sign on the window that said Utopia, and even electronic access for our employees, and we actually showed them a good facility, which they were thoroughly impressed with.
Did you ever fess up to your client?
Not to that exact client, but to many others.
I think you're going to have to before they just find out, man.
That's right.
That's why you realize we say large company in such and such business.
So, go ahead, Brandon. You want to jump
I
in?
think the most important thing in selling as a bootstrapped young business is you really need to believe in yourself, and that comes through when you're talking to your potential customers. The belief in yourself really, really helps. And real short anecdote about us. The way we got into the insurance business is because we tried to buy our own health insurance because we no longer had a group plan covering us. An agent walked in, mentioned that there's 30,000 agents that work for this company, and they all need websites set up for this application they were going to link to. So our sales process there is we called every single person we could get a hold of at that insurance company and told them that all we do is build websites for insurance companies or for insurance agencies. And so we kind of put on the airs and act like we had a bunch of people in a conference room, put it on speakerphone, and we almost faked it, but we believed in ourselves and we believed we could get it done. And so they ended up endorsing us, and that's kind of what got us moving. Got the wheels turning for us, and just believing in yourself makes all the difference in the world. We knew we could do it, and we did it. And you have to be able to be like that.
If I could add just one quick thing to that, I think we talk a lot about selling, and I think the most important thing in selling is listening to your customers. I think one of the things we did, the reason we grew the way we grew, is every single one of our initiatives was customer-led. I'd like to tell you that we thought of every single thing we did ahead of it's happening. But every single one of the initiatives or the areas of business we got into were customer-led because we were paying attention to when the customers were talking. And of course, we had the chutzpah to say, yes, we can do this. And it wasn't trying to be, sort of clever, but I think we heard the customer's need and we went out and built it and delivered it.
So there's a great quote that I remember using a lot in the early days with my team. I'd say, just remember one thing. People will be more convinced by the depth of your enthusiasm versus the height of your knowledge. And, it's really just go in there and be passionate about what you're doing. A very quick anecdotal story for me. I remember I had the first person I hired I'd worked before, so she knew me. The second person I hired at the company, I had a 211 East Ontario, second floor, 300 square foot office overlooking the trash cans in the alley with like bulletproof, caging on the windows. It was not a pretty place. And we were having an interview. And I was like, no one will ever come work for us if they walk into this office. So I went to the leasing office in the building. I said, can we use your conference room? So that's where we had all-day interviews. People would come in and we'd use their conference room. And then after I hired this person, I said, listen, I got to let you know that's not really our office. And thank God I convinced her well enough that she stayed, and she's actually still with us today. But it was really funny to see that happen. Okay, so real quick, greatest advantage you think bootstrapping provides, and then also what's the greatest disadvantage to actually being a bootstrapped firm?
I think the greatest advantage, at least for us, was flexibility. We didn't have somebody holding us to the original business plan we wrote. If we did, who knows where we'd be right now, but our business right now looks nothing like what our original business plan was. So the flexibility to kind of move, I think as a young company, it's really, really important to be extremely flexible, and not having somebody hold you to the fact that you said you're doing exactly this was a huge advantage for us.
Great. Ed?
Yeah, I think it gives a discipline early on in the business that you don't get in front of your skis, so to speak, because you can't afford to. So you're forced to really focus on things that customers are asking for and building those things because you need to get money in the door to keep things rolling. So I think that's a good discipline early. The disadvantages, are, I think, obvious. You don't have a lot of money to go hire the best talent. You don't have a lot of money to have flashy offices. Similar to Sean, our office was a one-room brick innards of the Chicago Athletic Association. And the only way to get there was to walk through the men's squash locker room, and there'd be like a 70-year-old naked man sitting there reading the Sun-Times on your way into the office every day. And then I'd go into the office, and it would be shit falling from the ceiling, and I'd have to brush off my desk and look over to the two people that were contractors that were crazy enough to show up with me every day there and be like, hey, how was your weekend? Like acting like I'm big time with my Michigan Avenue office. So that's a disadvantage, but I also think that's ingrained into the DNA of our company, so I see that as an advantage too. So that's my two cents.
Talking about the bad offices, one of the disadvantages. In one of our first offices, we had an employee actually get peed on by a dog in the room over our office. So I guess that would be a disadvantage.
Do they still work for you?
No.
I'll actually add something. I think an advantage is you look at some of these companies who take some money, and then the founders are then pressured to achieve a certain level of performance quarter after quarter, year after year. And I think a big part of building a great business is having some discipline, and sometimes it's not necessarily about making your quarterly numbers, but about doing the right things for the business for the long haul. And once you take that money and you don't hit those numbers, you might start making some compromises. Maybe I'm going to get into a bad deal that I shouldn't be getting to, or maybe I'm going to do some work that I really shouldn't be doing because I need the money, or maybe I'm going to customize the hell out of the program for this particular client because that's what it's going to take to get the deal, and that might not necessarily be the best thing for the business. So
that's a great point.
And disadvantage, I would say, is when you talk about like the flexibility being an advantage, you kind of bootstrapping after all these years, you become a cowboy, right? Like you're inventive and you're ingenious and you're just always shifting on the fly. But as you get bigger, you have to build a little bit more discipline and maybe a little bit more planning, and like so you gotta you gotta remove some of those elements in the way you operate.
Yeah, I think to me, the biggest advantage of bootstrapping was I didn't have to make a decision on who my financial partners were going to be. And I think financial partners have a very clear agenda. They're not in love with your business, they're in love with their money. And if you make a bad choice, they're used to 8 out of 10 companies of their investments not going through. And chances are you're going to be one of those 8. And if you don't choose the right partner, they're not going to be sticking on with you for too long if they're not seeing the returns. So I invested in my business partners, my co-founders, people that I knew, that I'd worked with before, that I trusted with my life. And I think that was the right call, because 3 co-founders without an external investor is a far more powerful team than an investor that's breathing down their neck and is not aligned with your interests and your vision and your passion for your business. The other point I was going to make is that it really forced us to today what we call the Utopia way, which is kind of had a big quarterly meeting and announced, really brought to life what the Utopia way of doing things is. And really it boils down to what we call turning the cube. You're forced to turn the cube. When you have no money, when you have no runway ahead of you, when you can't, you pay attention to every little detail, every little decision you make is important, because you don't have that runway, you don't have the extra cash to burn. So I think it really instills some very, very good fundamental practices that stand very well with you all throughout the rest of the company.
All right, so let's ask everyone to share a story that may be uncomfortable to share. Okay, I'll say this is the war story. And Arvind, I may even ask if you've got one maybe from your first company you did, that might be better, for us. But you're out there, you're fighting the good fight. Shit happens. Okay, what's that moment where you go, hell, I could be out of business? I mean, how close did anybody come to that brink of going, you know what, this is almost terminal, I'm screwed here, and what did you do?
I'm actually going to take an example from the current business, because you would think that the second time around was easier. So in summer of 2009, I remember we kept investing in the company, we kept growing the business, we kept hiring people, and the economy was just in the toilet in 2009. And I have to tell you, there were 2 or 3 months where I had already taken loans against my home equity line of credit. I had already converted a couple of CDs that I had put away after the last exit. And we came close to not meeting payroll about 2 or 3 times. And one of the worst things that I've ever done is that we had to go to what is called the factoring route, where you basically pay about, annualized 35 to 50% on the money they give you. And they're really out to get you your pound of flesh. But We had to do it, and the most difficult thing I did was send an email to my company once saying payroll's delayed by a week. But I was upfront, I explained the whole thing, and I said what we're doing about it, and we didn't lose a single person.
So 2008, we had an amazing year, growth of hundreds of percent. 2009 entered the year with that exact same trajectory, tons of cash in the bank, and we had an attorney file an ethics complaint against our business in 47 states at once. With the local state bar associations. And it wasn't just against us, he also named every single one of our customers personally. So we had to send out an email to every single one of our customers telling them that they've been involved in a request for investigation around whether or not their buying our marketing product was ethically permissible in their state. And could potentially have a blemish on their record as impermissible activity as an attorney. So we anticipated we'd probably lose like 50% of our customers overnight. And we sent the email out, and it actually had the reverse effect. It galvanized our customers with us. Because one of the things we said was, we will pay 100% of your defense costs. And we figured we'd just figure it out. We didn't know what the defense costs were going to be. It's the truth. I felt personally responsible for putting these people in harm's way. So it had when they read that, no one quit. I think we lost 2 customers out of thousands the next day. It was a sleepless night for sure, lots of them this course of this year. So the first conference call we did, we amassed a team that was basically the foremost experts across the whole entire country. One person here who was the head of the Illinois ARDC for 30 years, she came on as our head person, and then she hired every single person around the country. And we basically came up with a strategy. And I remember hanging up the phone from the first conference call, and I believe there were 13 attorneys on there, and I did the math, and it was $14,000 worth of legal fees on one conference call. I'm like, oh man, it's gonna be rough. So we were determined not to change our course of action because this one guy had this frivolous complaint filed against us. We knew we were going to prevail, but this is uncharted territory. No one had ever done this, taken an ethics complaint and used it as a competitive, basically throwing a stick into our spokes. And at this time, we were on such fire, building platform and customer sign up and everything, that we were determined, and this was maybe the naivety of the entrepreneur or the cowboy in him, I was like, the hell with this, we're doing like what we're gonna do. We bought a company 3 weeks later that we were diligencing buying with cash. We hired 110 people that year, and some of the products we were working on, the revenue didn't go as fast as we wanted it to, and had to end up lay off 45 people the end of 2009. Still, I'm almost like choked up over it. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Yeah. Got in front of all of them and told them, can't do this. It was awful. But we came out stronger. I think I'd go through that experience again if I had to. The company is in such a better place because we fought through it. Customers stood by us. We got to the other side of it, and products released. It was awful, though. Came really, really close. The legal fees ended up costing us $1.4 million in cash that year. Mortgaging houses, everything, all in. And before the ethics complaint, we had term sheets for $15, $20 million on our doorstep, bank revolving lines of credit for $3 million. Everything was flush, No, we don't need your money. No, we don't need that. Well, once we got in this ethics investigation, everyone was like, well, once you get through this, we're interested in talking. You're like, well, great. I don't really need you probably once I get through this. But it's the first time I've told this story to a large audience. I told Sean I'd go deep. So that was my deep story.
And we appreciate that. Thank you, Ed.
We've won in every state, by the way. Yes, thank you for pointing that out. We are 27-0 out of the 27 states that opened investigations. Most of them didn't do much, but it still cost a lot of money.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. Appreciate that.
There's a really good business book called The Breakthrough Company, and those who are starting businesses, I would highly recommend to read it. And the author in one of their chapters really talks about tough times you, and how every business needs to go through some really ridiculous hard time to really figure out, hey, do they have what it really takes to make it to the next level? And obviously that was your tough time, you, huh?
Yeah.
For me, I'll just say in 2007, we stopped doing consulting. We were focusing on the product, and we started the deal with a pretty sizable deal. It was a $250,000 software license. It was enough flow for us to not do consulting for a while and just focus on the product. We were all in on the product. I only signed one customer in 2007. Later that spring, we needed more money, so I convinced another customer to prepay 6 years of software licenses, got another 200 grand, ran out of money again, convinced my dad to give me 40 grand, he did it. I convinced one of my buddies to give me 30 grand, he did it. Convinced another buddy to give me 20 grand. These are all loans, by the way, he did it. So now I'm like, I've tapped into my customers, I've tapped into my good friends. 50 grand from your buddies is a lot of money, man. And these guys were not like high net worth people, but they believed in what we were doing. And then was completely out of cash. And I would go to like these different trade shows in the industry to go and sell the product. And I just like crashed the trade show, sleep on someone's floor. And I was at the pool like chatting up this lady, and this guy ends up like her husband or her boyfriend, it was her boyfriend at the time, like sat down next to me. And I ended up telling him like my story, you know, the K-Cura story and where we're at. And 4 hours later, he's like, starting to ask me financially how things are going. I just basically confessed everything to the guy, told him I was broke and I was probably going to go under like next week. And turns out this guy ends up being like the founder and the CEO of the largest tech services company in Europe. It's publicly traded. And he asked me who my clients were. He was friends with one of my clients who was the CEO. And the next day, he was like, you got to go help Andrew or he's going to go under. I'm walking through the hallways in this show, and the CIO comes up to me. He's like, I've heard you're into some trouble. Come to my office next week. I'm like, okay. Walk into this guy's office. He has a check for $50,000, right? The company kept on going. We closed another deal probably like 4 weeks later. We didn't go under. And this is where it's really important that like people really need to believe in you personally, and then they will help you.
Yeah, so us in the early years, we were doing anything we could to get money. So we were doing side projects. I had a bunch of friends that were developers, so I would get them contract gigs and just make a couple bucks an hour on top of them. And my business partner and I went into Chicago Pizza, and we were sitting there. We were completely broke. We've been broke for a couple of years, and we had the conversation, we're going to shut the business down. As we're talking about it, kind of one of our Hail Marys was I was trying to get somebody a full-time Java development contract, and I was going to get paid as a recruiter. And while we were sitting there talking about how we're going to shut the business down, I got an unexpected call from the company saying we're going to hire this guy, and if he stays for 90 days or something like that, we're going to pay you the fee that we owe you. And on that call, I begged him. I said, "Is there any way you can pay me right now? If he doesn't stay, I promise I'll pay you back the money." And kind of like Ed, we figured we'd figure it out if we had to pay it back somehow. He said, "Okay, that's fine. I'll pay you up front." We took the money. It was like 30 grand, and to us, 30 grand was more money than we had made in probably the past 2 years combined. So we got the 30 grand, went and got a portion of an office down in like the Fulton Market area, and that saved us from going out of business, and everything got better from there.
Thank you, guys. It's great stuff. I got chills, in fact, a few times listening to it. In fact, I'll quickly, because the spotlight's on them, share my story. Because I can't ask you guys to do it and me not throw what happened with us in. So, kind of a rocket ship ride through 2007. 2008 gets here. The recession comes in. We've made money every single year. 2008 is the only year in the history of our company we lost money. We lost $2.3 million that year. It's a pretty scary time. I don't know what to do when you lose money. But we had a $5 million line of credit with the bank here in Chicago. And we get a letter from them in, I think, March of 2009. And the letter says, "We are pulling your line of credit." That bankrupts us. I mean, that creates insolvency for our entire corporation. I've got 110 employees at this time, freaking out, absolutely freaking out. I actually write a letter. I happen to know I'm the president of the bank, and I write him a letter, and I said, "I need some more time." He said, "Let me make some calls." He was a wonderful guy, jumped in, gave me 60 days. In 60 days, I went to a factoring receivable firm, okay? And, I mean, these guys are just, I'm sorry if there's a factoring receivable firm, they're sharks. But I got a $2 million factoring line of credit at about 26% interest. The only thing I did good was I negotiated a 6-month out versus a year out. We actually had to pay $50,000 a month just to have the line open for the company. So it was by far, and I could easily get choked up about what those times in my life. But the one that we were talking about beforehand is and Ed and I were talking, and he goes, "Would you go back and change it?" I was like, "No, because the 08 and 09 years, I learned more. I probably grew 10x what I grew the first 5 years before that, going through something like that. The focus and creativity it gives you and the discipline is amazing. So let me ask you guys this. If you're to sit with an entrepreneur that's sitting in the room, someone's thinking about starting a company, knowing what you know, and knowing what you went through and the stress and for me, the gray hair a little bit, do you recommend bootstrapping? Do you recommend that that's the way to go, or do you, if they're thinking about, should I do it, or should I, take on some angel money? What do you recommend?
Looking at it myself, if you're somebody that doesn't have a tremendous amount of experience, if you're really young, fresh out of school, something like that, I would absolutely 100% recommend bootstrapping. And then I think now, like if I were going to do a second business right now, it would probably depend on the kind of business. Because all I know is bootstrapping, I'd probably tend to do that. So I'd start real small. I'd get one employee. If it's a technical thing, you get a developer before you get anybody else, and you take it slow. But that's because that's all I know. It does take much longer to do things if you're bootstrapping. I'd say it probably adds, for me, it added an extra 3-4 years in the front end of the ramp for us. So I guess I don't have a specific answer until I would hear what kind of business it is, but it really, really, really creates discipline and makes you manage the business from a perspective that you have to make money, to stay in business, obviously.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that, especially if you're a younger entrepreneur. There's no way I would have known at 25 what to do with $1 million. I would have bought Herman Miller chairs and hired people to work on things that I didn't know why they were working on them. So absolutely would recommend bootstrapping. I don't know if I'd bootstrap another company. I may self-fund it, but the idea of, I don't really consider that bootstrapping. Bootstrapping to me means you really have no money. You have a $30,000 credit card, and you have someone, if you've saved up $10,000 from your last few sales commissions checks. Like, that's bootstrapping. I don't know if I'll do it again because now I think I do have the discipline instilled, and I don't know if I'd have the patience enough to do it that way. But at the time, going from 2002 2005 is when we crossed the $1 million in revenue mark. So that 3 years, it was the first 6 months was 30,000 in sales. Then next year was about 100,000 in sales. And the next year was like 270 in sales. So you've got to be okay with that sort of trajectory and going a little bit slower. But I think there's nothing wrong with that. You just need to identify that's fine to grow a business like that.
All right, so let me change the question slightly here because we've got a trade-off here, okay? I haven't heard anybody talk about ownership and dilution yet inside this discussion, which is, so here's the thing. The trade-off is speed. You can go possibly faster, okay, versus retaining the company. And obviously, the faster you go, maybe the more protected you are, or you incur risk if you go slower. So, is that a discussion point for you guys? So
yeah, we were able to own the whole company. The team, my partner, I took a partner on in 2005. Between employee stock option plan, we put 15% of our stock out there post money, which is another benefit. So we were able to raise money on much different terms. We retained 90% of the company, and we were able to put 15% of the company into an employee stock option plan post money, which is different than if we had done it earlier. So yeah, obviously the financial benefits is if you can pull bootstrapping off, you're going to make a shitload more money. I don't think there's any question. But there's a lot of people with 100% of equity of bankrupt companies too. So it's
Andrew.
Yeah, if you could bootstrap until a point where the business is viable, you're gonna definitely make more money, right? But I think there's also an element of risk. I think starting a business is actually a very risky proposition, and depending on your family situation or what's going on, maybe you need to take some money to just hedge some of that risk. So it's a loaded question.
Yeah, I'd like to add a different kind of sort of perspective to it. I think a lot of people mistake starting a business with raising money. I think starting a business is not about raising money. Do you have an idea? Do you have a passion to build something? I think people get, just because of the hype around, it's like, you sort of start considering status or success with the amount of money you've raised. And I think people are confused these two things. You raise money if you're building a technology or a product that requires 1, 2, 3 years of investment. And there's just no way you can fund yourself for 3 years. So you need that extra set of cash. But if you're starting a business that does not require that much capital, and if you've thought through what the business is and you have passion for that, absolutely, I would say you're wasting your time trying to go run raising money, because you're absolutely wasting your time. That's the time you can spend finding customers and building a service. So I think the other thing that I was going to say is when you think about the business, it's very important not to sort of get distracted with this whole notion of raising money because you can do a lot of public relations around it, and you can hire people, and you can attract employees with money. What's going to attract the people and the investors or the customers or employees is the idea. So stay singularly focused on what that business idea is.
I think it's really important if you're bootstrapping or starting any business to protect yourself against dilution in the beginning. I've known Andrew ever since we started our company. We started our companies about the same time. We worked together at Lante before that, and I remember having a conversation with you where he said, "I will never give any stock away to anybody." He was very, very protective of it, and that kind of stuck with me. And so we were like that. We gave a little bit away to some employees here and there, but we never had a big stock option pool, and we never did it until well after. We probably didn't do it until after we were at $10 million. And now you end up, owning the majority of the company. And if you want to do something later on, and you can make a meaningful transaction for like 1% of your company or 2% of your company. And I'm so thankful that we protected ourselves against dilution, because if we wouldn't have, it'd be a very different story. You hear about these entrepreneurs that raise money and they have a big exit and they hardly make any money themselves, and that's tough when you put in all that work and don't get anything out of it.
Yeah, I was going to just add one more thing. Today, our company is 100% owned by the co-founders and the employees. And I find that the employees have so much passion about owning the company that they do not want any outside capital to come into the company. And then they think of ways to help you run the business without outside capital. So I guess what I'm saying is make sure your employees have a stake in the company so that they're thinking like owners as opposed to employees, and so they're your biggest multiplier.
So we've got probably about 20 minutes, 15 minutes left. Does anyone have a question right now? Go ahead. Chip. So I'll actually just repeat the question, because I don't know how easy it is for everyone to hear. So the question is really about, most of us, in fact, I think almost all of us started selling services right away, because it's an easy thing to sell. Okay, you don't need it. But at one point, you got to stop trying to be a linear business and really try to be a scalable business and get a product out to market. And at what point, in the inflection point, did we start thinking about that? Is that fair? Okay.
So similar to Andrew, it was a customer that we were actually doing work for. And we developed a marketing solution for a law firm that really took off, and identified that there were tens of thousands of law firms across the country that had the same desire to basically acquire leads through Google pay-per-click and search engine optimization and other sort of online channels. So in 2005, we decided to basically get rid of all of our consulting contracts. The partner at that law firm sold his interest in the law firm and joined me, and we went out to build this platform. We built it in 45 days, and we had no other revenue coming in again, so we had to kind of figure this out quick, and we went live and basically did a rebuild of a platform that we sort of honed it with one law firm, and then went out and sold that as a scalable solution to law firms across the country.
So I think an important thing, especially if you're a young entrepreneur, is to get a very good group of advisors that can help you. And the thing that kind of transitioned us from being a service business to being more of a product business is one of our advisors had told me he ran a very successful staffing firm. And he said, you know, I'd love to sell my business, but I can't sell it because it's me. And if you're smart, you'll create a product business, so if you ever want to sell someday, you can remove yourself from the equation. There's still value in your business. And that advisor is the one that really helped me kind of see the light there, and we started focusing on product at that point.
Just a real quick comment for us. You know, the concept of building a service business that can create profit while you're building software underneath of it and one day to spin it out, I think you'll find incredible success stories across the board with that. And, you know, we didn't launch our software as a standalone platform until I think 7 years after we started the company. Andrew, do you have a story on that?
Yeah, we always knew we wanted to be a software company. We wanted to sell software licenses, make revenue off software. And the way we approached all our service projects is if you're a technologist, right, we try to make everything reusable, extensible. We didn't do one-offs. We always modified our core platform. And as a service company, we were doing more and more work for these law firms. And we actually had a handful of things that we were pitching to the firms. I had one customer come up to me. It's like, it seems like you're just throwing shit at the wall and see what sticks. And like, it's kind of what we were doing. And eventually something stuck, so.
Awesome. Another question? We'll go right here first.
You mentioned turning employees into owners and behaviors of owners. What are the couple things that you did that drove that engagement?
So it's really, you know, turning employees into owners, and how do you really grab the hearts and the minds of the employees to feel like they're actually owning it and feeling really passionate about it? So what do you guys do to foster that?
You know, I think the simplest thing that you can do is be absolutely 100% transparent and honest with your employees. Now, here's one place I would say, you know, is the time and place to be 100% transparent. And I think that just singularly has, you know, brought us to where we are today, and we call it the Utopia way. But it's 100% being straight, upfront, and if you're kind of selling to your employees and there's no depth behind it, they're going to see through it very quickly. You're going to lose credibility, and they're going to walk out of the door.
Andrew?
Yeah, I think the stock is just one piece of it. We just put a stock option plan in place like 7-8 months ago, and we had complete engagement before that. People felt like they owned the place, and I think a lot of that was a genuine concern of ownership of employees and making sure they're happy, listening to them, allowing them to really do whatever they want in the office. You know, we say all the time we're trying to reinvent the day job. You know, we have no vacation policy. You take as much as you think you need. We let people come and go as they please. We, you know, try and treat people with professionalism and respect and autonomy, and you find that good things happen and people want to contribute to the organization and do things that you would think only ownership would do. But that, I think, is stock is one, but also there's lots of other things, transparency being definitely another.
You know, I'll just mention one thing, is I tell folks all the time, I go, you got to treat them like they're shareholders. If you actually, you know, have them be stock option holders and you don't treat them like a stockholder, then you're not doing them a disservice. So for us, it's, you know, they know all the financials on a monthly basis. They know exactly where we stand.
I'll go one more step to be very specific. We share financials with our employees. It shocks people. I mean, in fact, I had somebody come up to me last week at our quarterly business meeting. He said, "You guys are way too transparent." I mean, we put up our numbers every quarterly meeting and tell where we are.
Yeah. Chuck?
You're talking about, you guys talking about sharing a lot and asking some kind of hard questions here. You guys talked a lot about how little you made at the beginning. What's your current salaries?
All right, so the question is, we always talk about how little we made at the beginning. What's our salaries today?
I think my CFO pointed out to me that this is the first year in the history of the 9th year of being in business where my general ledger of past due deferred salaries is 0.
I think there's going to be a no comment across the board. How does that sound?
I think the point is, it's not at this point in our career life cycle, I think it's not the salary that we're working for. I mean, it's really, truly the equity that we're building and the bottom line and the distribution. So the days of working on a salary hopefully are sort of gone for most of us. You've heard the horror stories, but we're not past that point.
All right, Chuck, how much do you pay yourself right now? Oh, wow. I want his job. I want his company. I like it. All right, go ahead. Thank you.
Can you guys talk about the importance of the right complementary partner and when the right time to bring that person in is and what you should look for?
So we're talking about, what's the right, and when you mean partner, what type of a partner are you talking about?
Really, when you're bootstrapping, that person.
A strategic partner or a financial partner?
No. I mean, like a co-pilot or.
Oh, a partner. Okay, so another person to bring into your company. You're the guy running the show. When's the right time, or is it a right time to bring in a partner?
This is a huge sort of topic for me. I've done this twice, and I remember going back to my business school class on entrepreneurship, where the first thing they said is, try and not do this alone. And I think there's two kinds of partners. I know he's talking about like co-founders, but I have to tell you, the co-founder is such an important choice. Do not make that choice quickly. This is a person that you have to be able to blindly trust. This is not a friend only. This is not just somebody who you met who complements your skill, is a great technologist. But if you guys cannot trust each other blindly, do not do business with this person. This person will be singularly the one person that will help you through the ups and downs, one or two people, whatever number of partners you choose. The other thing I would say is do not underestimate the power of the support that you can get from your family. You cannot be an entrepreneur if your significant others, your kids, your parents, your brothers and sisters are not in with you. They will constantly question what you're doing if they're not bought in.
Great.
Yeah, my personality. I'm the kind of person that always wants to be around other people. I don't sit around alone doing things. So for me, going through the the startup process without somebody would be very lonely. It'd be difficult. And I think when you do find somebody, it's important. You need to have somebody that you trust. You need to have somebody that you can be close enough with where you can get into big, like knockdown, drag-out fights and still move on past that and realize that the good of the business is probably the most important thing. With my partner, we agreed up front, no matter whatever happens to the business, we're never going to let the business screw up our friendship. So, kind of knowing that in the back of your head, we'll fight with each other, we'll argue, and that actually makes the partnership work better. It makes it stronger because we have the respect and trust in each other. Kind of like a brother to be able to argue and like speak your mind and have the other person listen to that and respect that. And we've always come to agreements, which tends to be compromises when we do argue. So having a partner is invaluable for me.
Yes, so I've got the perspective on both sides. For the first 3 years, I didn't have a partner. I got the business to $1 million in revenue on my own and up to 13 employees. And it's really lonely. That's the best way to describe it. There's really no one to talk to about the things you're dealing with. And this conference is a great celebration of the community that's formed over the last 10 years since I've been doing this. But there wasn't even that when I started. There was not really like other entrepreneurs I knew that I could email and say, hey, do you mind if I talk to you about XYZ issue? So when I decided, we decided to partner, my partner and I had been working together in a client-vendor relationship for about 2.5 years, and that really served well because we knew what we were getting into. We knew each other really well, and a partner is a husband or a wife. I don't know which one I am and which one Kevin is. We could probably debate that, but the relationship is very similar to a marriage, so you really need to date. And I think so many people kind of have like 3 business meetings and become partners, and that's really dangerous. Like you need to get to know somebody and spend some time with them, and that would be my advice on partnership: is make sure you have enough time to get to know each other and spend some months or years together.
So first of all, I'm going to apologize because we're not going to have time for everyone's question, but I'll just ask that I think this is such a fun and amazing topic, and I know we could sit here for an hour or so and talk about stories. A quote that someone told me when I was going through the depth of 08 and 09 with respect to partners and other executives to bring on. It says that a lot of people will say adversity builds character, but I think the truth is that adversity reveals character. And you got to think about that long and hard. There might be your good friend or good buddy you like, but I'll tell you what, when times get tough, their character will come out in full force and you'll see exactly, what's there. So be very cautious of that. I'm going to wrap it up, and I'm sorry I know there's a bunch of questions out there, but I'm going to ask you guys just to wrap it up in 1 or 2 breaths, okay? If you guys can give the bootstrapped entrepreneur in the room just one piece of advice as we leave the day, what is it? And we'll start Brandon, and we'll end with Arvind.
One piece of advice. I'd say believe in yourself and know you're going to succeed. That's the one thing I see that makes people succeed, is the fact that they know they're going to up front.
I try to, people come up to me and ask about running a business if they have any advice. I think people really need to know that it is a really selfish operation. It really is. Starting a business, not having the money, I mean, you really have to dedicate a tremendous amount of time and energy into your business. And if you don't have your family behind you, if you don't, it's really important to realize that.
Yeah, I don't know. One piece, if you had to like lead weight, I could think of it for a little bit here. I think one is don't listen to people like us too often, like the experts out there, so-called, big quotes around that. I think you can get steered off in lots of different directions. So I would say listen to everybody, digest all you can, and make your own decisions. You know, I mean, if you know that the path you're going down is the path you want to go down, for better or for worse, you've got to be confident to charge at that path at 120 miles an hour. And if you're successful, great. If you're not, charge down the next path at 120 miles an hour and just keep charging. And eventually you're going to hit a path that is the right one. So that would be my advice.
I like to call it the 10x principle. So the way to think about it is don't try to boil the ocean on day one. You try to get the first $100 of revenue, then you get the 1,000, then you get the 10,000, the 100,000, and the million, and so forth. But I think it really is important to break down the problem into simpler parts, something that you can deal with and do something about on a daily basis. So don't try to be that $10 million company out of the door. You know you have to first get to the 100,000 and the 10,000. And the second sort of thing to that is 24 hours, we say in our business, 24 hours changes a lot of things. So when you hit that wall, don't try to solve that problem in the next 24 minutes. Take the 24 hours and you'll be amazed as to how much has changed in 24 hours.
That's great advice. So first of all, thank you guys for showing up, and thank you guys for the panelists. Have a great day.